And if it weren't for him being president, he'd be in prison with Michael Cohen today as individual one, and he obstructed justice as the Mueller Report says it so. We are in danger. We need to respond, and we need to act for the people of the United States of America.
As you may have guessed, Congressman Steve Cohen, he's Democrat, and he voted today to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress. So did the rest of the Democrats in the House Judiciary Committee, which gave it enough votes to advance to a full House vote. This whole thing, it started when Barr defied a subpoena by refusing to hand over the full unredacted Mueller report. By the way, President Trump asserted executive privilege to block the release of the entire thing, even though he claimed it exonerated him. Now, here is Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, who went even one step further. Listen to what she had to say about the head of the House Judiciary Committee.
Chairman Nadler is asking the Attorney General of the United States to break the law and commit a crime by releasing information that he knows he has no legal authority to have. It's truly outrageous and absurd what the chairman is doing, and he should be embarrassed that he's behaving this way.
Also today, you have Axios reporting that the Senate Intelligence Committee, again run by Republicans, they've issued a subpoena for Donald Trump Jr. Republicans, as I said, head up the committee, and the report says they want Donnie Jr. to answer questions about his previous testimony before that panel regarding the Russia investigation. Interesting. All of that happening as a growing number of former federal prosecutors are saying if Trump were a private citizen, he would be charged with obstruction of justice. I'm talking about the president. This is a bipartisan group, I should mention, that has signed on to the letter making their case. The letter now has roughly 700 signatures. And a good friend to the program, Roland Riopel, he is one of them. He joins us now. And let's start off with the letter. And I've talked to a couple of the folks who also have put their names to it. They say, you know, make no mistake, the substance of 700 and growing former federal prosecutors from different administrations, from different political backgrounds, and that there isn't any hedging in the note, it's declarative. That is substantive in its scope. Tell everybody why you put your name to it and what you think the letter really signifies in terms of from the justice community, where they see where we are right now.
Well, Richard, I do think that we're at a very dangerous juncture in our nation's history where we are leaning toward and tipping toward autocracy. And I think it's the duty of every citizen to do what he or she can to try to pull the country away from where it's headed and to do what we can to try to block Mr. Trump and encourage his removal from office. And I think that's the primary purpose of the letter. It's to show that a significant part of the legal community that knows what obstruction of justice is standing up and putting pressure on Congress by writing this letter to do its duty and begin hearings to determine whether impeachment and removal of from office is necessary with respect to Mr. Trump. Congress has got to do its duty, and this is one way I can bring some small pressure on them to do it.
And one of the principal jobs of Congress is oversight. And that brings me to my question. I've often said and been awed by the brilliance of our founding fathers. I mean, the document that is the Constitution, the foresight they had. That all said, I think it's fair as we look at all these questions we're going to get to right now, they never foresaw Donald Trump because it's not clear, maybe you can dispel this, that it's not implicit that Congress can investigate a president in terms of the mechanisms as to how, and also it's not explicit as to whether or not a president can keep secrets from a Congress. Was there a blind spot in this because no one could have ever imagined a Trump? Or do you think the law is more clear than I'm giving it credit for?
Well, Richard, I think what Congress didn't anticipate is the situation the country is in right now, where you have a president who is clearly an autocrat in waiting and doing all he can to become a dictator. And one political party lying supine at his feet. I don't think that the framers of the Constitution, who of course were writing that document on the heels of a revolutionary war, ever thought that a political party would behave in the way that the Republican Party is behaving today. I think that is what they didn't account for. And I think they expected that vigilant members of Congress would stand up and do what they needed to do to investigate and remove, if necessary, a rogue president like the one we have right now. They never anticipated that something like the Republican Party would exist. They just didn't think that citizens would be this easily steamrolled.
Well, help me out, because a lot of parallels are drawn to Watergate. And I thought, Roland, that in '74, when the Supreme Court said, no, you got to turn the tapes over, that it was a precedent that said, you know, now we got black letter law here in terms of that there is the right of Congress to have oversight, and, you know, the tapes, you know, were Exhibit A. Can we apply that to now in terms of the idea that the president can just say executive privilege after McGahn's already testified for 30 hours, for crying out loud, or that the document, you know, it's almost extortive what the Justice Department is threatening to do. Did Watergate clear any of that up, or do we have to relitigate this all over again without any guidance?
I think Watergate did clear it up, but that will not stop a man like Mr. Trump from relitigating everything over and over again if he believes that delay is in his best interest, and I think he does in this circumstance. I believe Trump's view here is litigate everything, make Congress go all the way to the Supreme Court for everything, slow it all down, wear them out, wear out the public. You know, the public does get tired of all of this if it doesn't see it in black and white and living color on its TV sets day after day after day, the way it did in Watergate. Remember, in Watergate, it took a long time for the Republicans to come around entirely and for the public to come around and for Nixon to be removed from office. What Trump's game is here is to delay and delay and delay and hope that he can string it out long enough that everybody just gets exhausted and is unable to demonstrate to the public just how bad he really is. I think that's his game.
And I'll give one more motivation for them playing four corners is you got an active Southern District, Eastern District, you have these cases moving forward, the 14 referred cases, et cetera. If all of a sudden they come back with some pretty damning things, the president wouldn't want to be a private citizen and have to face the music's end. So the longer and the better odds he gives himself in 2020 for a host of reasons he'd want to. Now, well, I got you. I want to ask, we mentioned about the Republican Party, including some folks that I don't recognize anymore, Lindsey Graham being among them, but the Intel Committee, which is chaired by a Republican, Senator Barr, they've now subpoenaed Donnie Jr. Over supposedly his meetings with the Russians. What's going on here? It's the first time a Trump family member has had to face the music in this way. And again, this is with the blessing of Republicans. Do you read any substance into this?
I think what's happening here, Richard, may be what happened with Attorney General Barr. I think that the Republicans in the Senate may have the sense that Chairman Nadler and the House Judiciary Committee were gearing up to subpoena Donald Jr. They'd rather subpoena him to the Senate first. In that context, where they can control the testimony better, they can get the best possible testimony on these very, very difficult issues that they can, and he can then credibly refuse, at least initially, to testify before the House Judiciary Committee. I think this is a setup. I think it's a conspiracy amongst the Republican senators to give Donald Jr. the cover that he needs to avoid testimony before the House Judiciary Committee. Remember, that's what happened with Bill Barr. He testified in the Senate. He got a lot of softball questions from the senators, the Republican senators. They protected him the best that they could, and then he walked away from the subpoena in the House. That's what's going to happen with Donald Jr. I think that's what's going to happen with every witness that the Senate suspects the House Judiciary Committee will call. They will call them first. They will testify in the Senate first, in the best possible jurisdiction they can testify in, and then they will refuse to testify in the House and say, I've already testified, I've said it all, leave me alone. And
interesting.
Then the House will be left to litigate that for months before they can get the witnesses in.
And I hadn't heard that one. I think that answers my final question. I only got 30 seconds. The big three, in whatever order, McGahn, Barr, and Mueller, of course. You think we're going to hear from these guys? And do you think we're going to hear from them in 2019?
Barr and McGahn, who are Republican apparatchiks, I don't know. I still have faith in Robert Mueller that he'll be like Gary Cooper in the old movie High Noon and stand up and do what's right. I hope he will.
Fingers crossed.
That's all I can say, Richard. I don't know. The other two, I have my doubts. Yeah.
Roland, one day we're going to have more less depressing stuff to go over here, or concerning stuff, but I always appreciate you giving me a few. Thanks, Roland. All right, everybody. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the politics surrounding the Mueller report and a whole lot more with our good friend, ABC News political director Rick Klein.